Welcome back to the Growth Formula. My name is Bulani Putani and I'm joined yet again by Eliah. And today's topic is quite interesting. I think all of them are actually interesting, but this one I just want to hear your input on this. It's about the cash flow trap, right? Spoke about systems and people, and you said like systems and people are only 2/3 of the growth trap, and the third one is money. So I just want you to take me through the cash flow trap and what is it about and what that is.
All right, so growth is exciting until cash flow start asking questions. That's what we say. And I'd like that to sit in the minds of all the listeners, the founders. So the crux of a business is that when you start a business, you want to make money, and that's cash flow. And one thing that I think we should not confuse about cash flow is that or cash flow management is that checking your bank balance is not cash flow management, okay? and I think a lot of founders, they get stuck in that situation where there is profitability in the business is making money on paper, meaning that there is profit. However, the money is not there. And this is one of the main things that we deal with, or because we said growing businesses, a lot of them were dealing with this on a day-to-day basis, trying to make them understand that the fact that we are profitable doesn't suddenly mean that there's money. And now, one thing you see, which is very interesting, is that, so what growth does, it hides the reality in this sense. So you are seeing profitability is up, you are hiring, new contracts, everything, all there's enthusiasm in the business. But the one thing that it hides is that you're going to run out of cash. And the bank account will expose this later on. It doesn't happen instantly. So when you're excited about new contracts, new trucks, or new product, new people, everybody, that buzz, it makes you feel like you are bulletproof. But let me tell you something, cash flow will knock. And how this happens is that, remember, profitability is the profit that you make. Literally, your revenue minus expenses, but that doesn't translate into money in the bank. Then cash flow is actually the money you receive. So number one, there's a timing difference, right? Which is that when you make profit now, it's an accounting period, but you might be paid 30 days later or 60 days later. There's that mismatch. Then secondly, your balance structure is the key. So if you make 500,000 profit, for example, and you've got loans to savings for 700,000, do you see the gap there? It's already there before you do anything. So the fact that you're making a profit of 500,000, if let's say for argument's sake you turn that 500,000 into cash, it doesn't cover 700,000 debt payment or debt servicing costs. So those are the two key things that way I see founders forget or actually get hold into with growth, in the sense that they forget the timing. So a new contract comes in, you're happy about it. No, we are taking this contract. Okay, great. If you check when you're getting paid for this. Secondly, what is it that you need to put in before you start getting paid? Are you going to buy a truck if it's transport logistics? Are you going to hire people? Are you going to buy stock? All those things you need to consider them. And these are cash payments that needs to happen. So if you talk about assets, investing in assets like trucks, there's huge capital deployment. If you're going to buy it on credit, you probably need a deposit, right? And if it's a new project you're funding, you need the stock. And stock, sorry about that. When you look at stock, the challenge with it is that the e-commerce guys we work with, they don't get the stock locally. You import it. So there's a timing difference as well, and this stock is paid in advance as well. So that timing difference of cash flow, before you get excited about a project which is profitable, you need to look at those things and say, when are we getting paid? What are we paying? Before we get paid, what are we paying? When are we paying those things? And from there, then what you need to do now as a founder, before that excitement hits you, is that if that expectation we have for payment doesn't happen as we think it's going to happen, how much runaway do we have? So you expect to get paid by 30 days. Things do happen in business, then don't get paid by 30 days. Are you able to sustain it? That's the challenge, and that's the key.
I think that's very important to mention, like the timing difference, because in accounting we do say that we recognize revenue once you fulfilled
The obligation.
the obligation,
Yeah.
but not necessarily once you receive the money in the bank account.
100%.
But do you think like this is the problem for small businesses, or it happens even in larger scale?
So this problem is universal, in this sense that it happens in small business and big business. But bigger businesses, the advantage is that they've got higher lines of credit. They already sit with that. Because what growth does, it stretches the gap between profit and cash. It keeps on stretching it as you grow and grow. And also bigger business, the advantage is that they've already turned their profit into cash over a long period of time, so they can use the reserves to fund their growth. They also got credit lines with the banks. As a small business, the timing of you having a credit line in the bank is key. So if you see it as a small business, when you don't have something that you're focusing on growth, that's the right time to go to the bank and get that credit line and let it sit there. Don't use it. So get that credit line before you grow, so that when that growth time comes, you actually can utilize it. With bigger business, they've got higher reserves, they've got cash in the bank. Secondly, they already have got credit facilities, probably with 4 or 5 banks already. So it's easier to manage in a bigger business. But in smaller business, because of lack of experience, exposure and expertise. So what you then do, when things are fine, you're fine, you don't look at credit line. Then when growth happens, it actually happens to you, it arrives. We talk about engineering growth, right? It happens to you. Then when that unfortunately happens, you get exposed. And the excitement of growth in a small business actually kind of divert the owner from the reality of what's happening. You focus on we're hiring, we're having this and that. Then you forget to analyze that gap. Then you are caught by it. So now it's crisis management. So like I said, growth is exciting until cash flow start asking questions.
Can you please walk me through a real example of that gap or making it?
Wow, yeah, I think I have one exciting one. E-commerce. And this one, it's exciting in this sense that I've seen both sides of it.
Okay.
I've seen the great side of it and the bad side of it in one customer.
Oh.
Yes. So there is the customer we took on. I think they were doing like about what, 90,000 a month, something.
Okay.
And we pushed them all the way to 500 a month. Right.
Wow.
But what I saw in this is that when we took them on, and this happened within 18 months, when we took them on, we put the structures of actually managing the cash. So we're buying stock from China, pay 30% deposit, margins were about 50%. So on 500, which means your stock is 250.
Yeah.
30% deposit, and you've got 3 months lead time. So in other words, you got to pay a deposit, another deposit, then stock comes in. So what we then end up doing there, we structured the cash flow in such a way that on monthly we place orders. We actually manage their stock, we place the orders, then pay the deposit. Then we structured the cash flow in such a way that it was that by the time you get to month 3, the stock arriving, it is the same time we're withdrawing funds from the Shopify account to service this. So it was so tight, like very, 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 very tight. But then the business grew. We actually work with the founder to actually grow the business from the 90,000 to 500,000 a month. So it very impressive. The business went to 6 million a year within 18 months. But the management of that, of the cash flow in the stock, was the 2 key things. Because cash flow, once you lose it, you're dead. The suppliers in China, they needed their money. So what then happened was that as we managed that, it was very tight. I can tell you that. Profit was great, 50% money profit is great, but the cash flow was, we were fine. Any mishap there could have been gone wrong. Then the owner got excited, thought that it was up to her, that things were happening. Then she ought to say, no, let me take over. And we told her that we don't think that you are ready, but she said, no, I'm ready. So I think within 7 to 8 months, the business was back to less than 50,000 a month and owing 1.5 million to the banks. So these, I'm saying this because I saw both versions of it. So when you get excited about something and you think you're in control when you're not, that's what the challenge happened. The owner felt that, oh no, the business is great now, it's doing good, but she forgot to see where the value is coming from. The value was for the cash flow management and stock management. So that whole thing just it broke like that because we put in a system to manage the stock and the cash flow. Then it all crumbled, and she's working in a garage right now, from 8 employees to 0.
So like she didn't see that coming. Like obviously she was most probably blindsided by the profit.
Yes, and also the glory of now doing 6 million. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But then that glory is okay. Trust me, I don't need to get a thunder from somebody's business. I'm fine working the background. Take your thunder, but see where the value is coming from. Because once you misuse that stock management, once you don't see that there is a tight system being managed here, you are going to fail. Because you see, the gap from when you pay a supplier for stock until you get paid by your own customer is key. It's 3 months. You start by paying a deposit in day 1. Then the stock will arrive 3 months later on, and you'll be paying in the process. And for your stock management to work, you can't just pay this one and stock them, because stock needs to roll. So after that, you need to pay a deposit for another one. When that one arrives, then you pay the full amount. You see, so that process, that chronological order of running it is very key, because that gap, you are paying first before your customers buy the product. And then if you run out of product, your customers go buy somewhere else. So that's what we see with founders, that growth, and everything was going so well. I'm telling you, great. I still remember this. It's not too long ago. It's this very last year. It's 2025. I'm not talking about something that's. It's this very last year. Everything was exciting, hiring, everything great starts. People are buying the product, but then one mistake she made, she forgot where the value was coming from. She thought that she had it under control, and it fell apart because she didn't understand the stock management and the cash flow management which was happening. And once the business ran out of cash, you have nowhere to turn to. And I remember by the time we said, okay, it's fine, you can go, the business was 0 debt. When we actually took it on, she had a 700,000 debt that was paid off to 0. And then the business was at cash. Then when we left, now 1.5 million debt. It happens, but I think the lesson there, don't just get excited, and also understand it. If you're working with people, it's a system that is working, not you. That want to take that thunder, want to have that bunch of flowers, I think is the challenge.
Yeah, but would I be okay to say that what killed the business isn't the cash flow, but it could be that maybe there was bad negotiations amongst with the suppliers, like in terms of they could have just opted to take like better payment terms instead of like how you explained it in your example.
So when we actually got them, they were paying for stock cash.
Okay.
So we actually then negotiated terms to say, let's pay 30% deposit when we place the order, then pay the balance on delivery. So the terms were better already. The terms were actually got better. But the key there was not terms. Terms do help. The management of that system to actually know what makes things tick is what's key there. Yeah.
So like, why do they not like see this whilst they're running the business? Because obviously the bank balance could just be an indicator to say that something is happening with the business.
It's the noise that growth creates. Yes. You know, growth, what it does when you are growing a business, you get these butterflies, you know. We are hiring, we need more people, and we've got a branch there, more stock, and look, we've sold, we've got a big order from this. All that excitement, those butterflies, they confuse your mind that you don't see actually what's going on. You also, if you are not careful, you get absorbed in that noise of growth, because everything is going so well. The last thing you would think is, we might have a cash flow. No, you wouldn't think that you're going to have a cash flow problem, because everything is just so positive. Oh my God, good orders coming in there. We're hiring new people. Your social media is doing well. You feel good. You know what I'm saying? You feel great.
Yeah.
But there's one thing you're forgetting. The cash flow, and it doesn't hit you then. It's like a sneaky thing. You know what I'm saying? The cash flow doesn't hit you right there. So it extends itself slowly. Then when it comes, it's gonna hit you where it hurts. Then that's the challenge. So you don't see it instantly. It comes, it does this thing of dragging, that you can cover it. In the early stages, you can just, cover it. Then it stops. That's when everything stops. Yeah.
Yeah, you gave me an example on the e-commerce side. Is it different with other, like manufacturing, for example?
It actually is different. Actually, I wanted to show you how it's different with transport, in the sense that, so with transport, it's interesting in this sense. If you got a new contract, let's say you buy a truck, probably there's a deposit, there's capital investment on it. But what then it does with transport is that your debt servicing, your monthly debt payment, you are increasing it. So what we see with the growing transport business, especially funded by debt, is that because your profit, which is normally 10 to 12%, is always, in most cases, lower than the amount you need to pay for your debt. Simple. Somebody who's making 500,000 profit in transport, they will be servicing debt for 700. That's the trap on, because for you to make that profit, depending on your contracts, you are looking at probably about 7-8 trucks, right? And 7-8 trucks, on an average of about a new truck, you're paying about 70,000 each. A trailer, depending if it's fuel or not, you're looking more or less the same amount. You're looking about 140, 150. Then you push that, you are looking at very close to 700. Then your insurance on top of that, your monitoring costs. So your servicing costs, your running costs, yes, they come out of the income statement, right, to make your profit. But your debt servicing cost becomes a massive issue. So with the transport, that's where the trap is. And normally what we've seen is that the debt servicing cost is always higher than the profit. So whatever is left of the profit when you get it, it can't cover this. Just that. That's where the mismatch is. And then you then try to kind of cover that gap, but it's very difficult. It can be done. You can plan it in such a way that you manage your growth. You know what I'm saying? You actually manage your growth, knowing that we have got this gap. The key is to know it. Know that this is our profitability. The contract we're adding, these are the requirements. Go through those stages to say, what are we going to pay on a monthly basis? What are we going to get paid on a monthly basis? When? Because growth creates a gap. Because it requires you to do things before the return comes in. That's how the gap is created. You are supposed to do a lot of things. So it's like planting seed, so that you harvest later on, 4 or 5 months later. So that's what it does. You spend money now in order for you to have the harvest later on. So that is the gap that keep on growing and growing. And if you don't watch it properly, cash flow starts asking those questions, it won't be nice. It won't, you'll be in trouble.
Yeah, I think I understand, because you're right when you say growth, it consumes cash,
yes,
before it returns it.
And
it's like return on investment.
Yes, and it wants the cash now.
Yeah.
It wants that cash now, so that later on, that's where you get the fruits of it. But that gap is where the businesses die. That gap, people fall in that pit and they don't come out of it. Yeah.
So, like, is this also different, or is it the same? Because you did say in transport it's different, and also in manufacturing, right? Yeah. So is it the same with SaaS and IT? Because obviously those are like.
So with SaaS and IT, you're looking at your main fixed cost there, because a fixed cost is one of the dangerous things in a business, because it doesn't move with how things are moving. It's fixed, it's there. So software costs are the key ones. You have to pay them upfront. Okay. So if you pay for software costs now and your customer pays you 30 days later on after delivery, or 60 days later after delivery, are you able to manage that gap? And that's the key as an IT business. Are you able to absorb that cost in the business? And for how long can you do that? And that's the key. And you need a 90-day runaway to sustain growth properly. If you do not have a 90-day runaway, you're going to run a problem. Why 90 days? Because if things go wrong in terms of you getting payment, they still get for you to actually still continue running the business while you're trying to collect. But if your runaway is so intact that it's just 30 days, they won't pay you in 30 days, and you're out of money. What are you going to do? So it's important to calculate that gap between where the cash is of the business and your runaway, and it's better to make as big as possible. 90 days is safe. If you can't, 60 days is better. 6 days better. Yeah.
I think you mentioned like the cash runaway check, right? So how like I know like there should be like some sort of questions that they need to ask themselves in order to tick box all those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing you need to do is this project or this growth we were undertaking. First of all, what do you need to pay when before you get paid, and when do you need to pay to actually pay yourself on the side of the business? Then the third one is, if you don't get paid when you are supposed to be paid, how long can you sustain? Okay.
Yeah, I think that one is the most difficult. Yeah.
That's the key. That's the runaway, because it then tells you to say, I can live for 30 days without getting the payment back from these people, because problems do happen in business. I was saying to one of the people I met just now at the convention center now that business is about solving problems. That's why business exists. You identify a problem and resolve it. So if you can't identify problems in your own business, so what business are you in? You need to be able to identify, to say, if these people are also in business, they will run into problems. Because once you run that thin line to say, they pay me here and I rely on that, you're going to run into problems. You're going to not be able to pay salary, service debt, you've got arrears and blacklisting and all those things. Once you get those debit orders declining, the next thing you apply for finance, you get declined. So those are the key questions you need to ask yourself, to say, is my business aligned with these questions? If your answer is saying yes, yes, yes to all of those, then check the project. But if the answer is no, no is still an answer. Just leave it. It's not, your business is not ready for it. Be that as you are not ready for it. That excitement, which growth, I said growth is exciting until cash flow starts asking questions. And that's the key for me, that you need to measure that gap between how far can your business run with your own cash before the cash from outside coming.
So if someone is listening right now and they want to push growth, and what are the steps that they need to take from this episode?
I think the first thing is just measure your runaway. That's number one. Or maybe the main thing, measure your runaway. If things doesn't go as per plan, if I don't get paid by this as per plan, how much cash do I have to sustain the business? So that once you have that, the other questions can come in, which I mentioned earlier on. But that's the key question. Measure that gap between your business where it is and when you get money. And between that, are you able to sustain it? If the answer is yes, take the project. If not, don't. Leave it. And when you're measuring that gap, it's so important to be articulate about it. The enthusiasm which growth brings, it's very nice. But the questions will come later on when the cash is not there. So I'll say to you, in closing, is that measure that gap, that runaway gap between now and when you get paid. Because if you don't measure that gap, you'll get measured, and it won't be nice.
Thank you so much, Eliah.
Okay,
and that's it for today's episode. See you again on the next one.